Stand up, David Carrick. I've made ancillary orders for deprivation pursuant to Section 153 of the Sentencing Act 2020 and restraining orders under Sections 359 and 360 of the Act. They will remain in force until further order. The victim surcharge applies. I make no sexual harm prevention orders given the nature of the sentence I'm about to pass. On the main indictment on counts 16, 19, 29, 30, 31, 32, 38, 39, 42 and 43, the sentence is 4 years imprisonment on each concurrent. On counts 24 and 25, the sentence is 7 years on each concurrent. On count 6, on the second indictment, I impose a concurrent determinate sentence of 9 years. 31 sentences of life imprisonment are imposed on the main indictment on counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, 28, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 40 and 41. Also, 5 life sentences are imposed on the second indictment on counts 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. This makes a total of 36 life sentences. The minimum term you will have to serve before the parole board can think of releasing you is 30 years, 239 days. And you may go down. Mr. Little, Mr. Williamson, the court salutes the courage of all the victims and their families, and I hope they're able to thrive in the rest of their lives. The teams of police officers concerned have worked hard to bring this case to court and to keep the confidence of the victims. To do so under the fierce scrutiny this case has attracted is promising for the future. The Crown Prosecution Service lawyers and counsel have met tight deadlines set by the court and put the case together fairly and effectively. The defence team has met the challenge of dealing with an evolving set of grave allegations and a completely disorientated client with patience and professionalism. The court wishes to recognise that work and to thank all of you.
Okay. Well, we will just leave that now as the sentencing finishes up there. The judge, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb, there adjourning the case and sentencing the former Met Police officer David Carrick to 30 years, a minimum of 30 years in prison. Well, with me now to get reaction on that is Farah Nazir, who is the Chief Executive of Women's Aid. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, you were just watching proceedings there. Just give me your reaction to that sentence. Is it enough?
Well, I mean, it's the acceptable sentence in a very, very unacceptable situation. It's come 17 years and 12 victims at the very least, and 85 offences too late, I think is the overriding concern here. I think what it does show is the courage and commitment and determination of those women who went up against an agent of the law. It is very, very hard to do that, even when you're not up against a police officer, and the courage and bravery really needs to be commended, and that will send a message to other women in this situation that justice can be achieved.
And to other women, that's a huge point, really. And there will be so many women watching this, hearing about this, hearing that this is yet another Metropolitan police officer involved in a horrific case. You obviously speak to a lot of women who have been through very, very difficult circumstances. What do you understand about a women's relationship between the Met Police?
I think it's fair to say that women have lost considerable trust in the Met Police. I mean, if you look at the, starting off with the Sarah Everard case, and then a raft of reports, and now this latest case here, I mean, what we've not seen is a real shift or a real turnaround. We still see that the culture is prevailingly misogynistic and sexist. Not enough training is going in. But frankly, what we need to see is an overall change in culture. We need a whole system shift, a transformation here. We need everything to be looked at and scrutinised. We need proper leadership. What we don't need is yet another report. We've got the reports, we understand what needs to be done, we need action to be taken. And that looks like a real scrutiny around who's coming into the police, a real scrutiny on the culture, training. We need for violence against women to be prioritised. If it's not prioritised, if there isn't political will there, then none of the rest will follow. So it needs a real overhaul before women begin to trust the police, particularly the Met again.
Well, the Met has replaced its leader. We saw Cressida Dick leave. It has said it is rooting out corrupt officers. It said there are going to be some really hard stories to hear along the way. Don't you feel like they're doing that and they are sticking to their word?
I think work is being done, and there are some very, very good people doing very good work. And we don't want to take away from the important work that the police do. However, cases like this and abuses like this really, really expose the culture that exists. I mean, the fact that this officer was brought to attention 9 times, 3 times within the Met, colleagues knew about his behaviour, but he was allowed to persist. He actually came in to the Met with concerns around relationships, that he'd had coercive and controlling relationships. How is that allowed to happen? And what assurances do we have right now, not just the Met, but the whole of the police forces across the country, that more is being done? We need far more transparency. We need to understand what's happening, and we need to see that the police are actively working with women's groups, with women, to bring in a shift in the change of the culture that's clearly dominant right now.
I've spoken to many victims, many survivors who have dealt with the Metropolitan Police, and what they've said to me quite often is that they, when they go and report something like this, they'll often have to report it to a man, or they don't feel like they're listened to. Is that what you're hearing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's not just the Met. It is all police forces who work across the country. It is fair to say that the vast majority of reports do go into men. That is a very, very difficult situation for a woman who's experienced sexual abuse or domestic violence or domestic abuse or any form of abuse. That shouldn't be the case at all. If a woman is presenting with this kind of issue, there should be a female officer on board who's been trained, who's able to really support that survivor, that victim, to tell their story. There need to be connections with local women's services, so the survivor can be referred as they need to be referred and supported through the system. The system currently is just not set up to support women who have experienced sexual violence, any form of violence against women or girls, or domestic abuse. It's just not set up, and we can see that day in and day out. We also need thorough training, together with a thorough cultural shift and prioritization. It needs to be the top priority of all the forces across the country, that they need to deal with this in terms of how they are culturally positioning women and how seriously they're taking these crimes against women. And it needs to be absolutely prioritised when it comes to training.
OK, well, thank you very much. That's Farah Nazir, the Chief Executive of Women's Aid, speaking to us and giving us reaction to the sentencing of David Carrick, the former Met police officer who will serve a minimum of 30 years in prison.